I will not stand for this behavior.
You are wrong to treat me this way.
A simple woman was insulted at her job interview until the CEO bowed and made her chairwoman. If you felt inspired by Anna's journey from humiliation to triumph, hit that like button and share this story. Subscribe now for more real-life motivational stories where courage and integrity win. Don't forget to click the bell icon so you never miss an inspiring video. The morning sun spilled across the New York City skyline, turning the glass towers into walls of gold. Inside one of those towers, on the 42nd floor, the Donovan Enterprises boardroom gleamed with polished elegance. The long mahogany table stretched across the room, surrounded by high-backed leather chairs. The skyline view through the floor-to-ceiling windows was breathtaking, but Anna Miller didn't have time to admire it. Anna stood at the door, her hands lightly clasped in front of her, trying to steady her breathing. She wore a simple navy dress and a small pendant necklace, minimal makeup, and her hair pulled back neatly. There was nothing flashy about her, nothing that screamed confidence, and that was exactly what made her feel invisible in this room full of judgmental eyes. "Miss Miller?" A crisp, controlled voice called. It was Lauren Stevens, the senior HR manager. She was already seated at the far end, her posture perfect, legs crossed, perfectly polished nails tapping on the table. A faint smirk played across her lips. Yes, that's me," Anna replied politely, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. Lauren nodded curtly, motioning for Anna to enter. "Please, take a seat. The CEO will be with you shortly." Anna slid into the chair at the table's center, trying not to fidget. The silence was heavy, almost suffocating, as the other board members turned their eyes toward her. She could feel the subtle appraisals, the raised eyebrow here, the slight smirk there. Her heart thumped in her chest. Moments later, the double doors at the head of the table opened, and Richard Donovan, the CEO, entered. He was a commanding presence. Broad shoulders, silver-streaked hair, and an air of authority that made the room tense. His gaze swept across the boardroom like a lighthouse beam, landing finally on Anna. "Miss Miller," he said, his tone smooth but carrying an unmistakable edge. "I hope you're comfortable. I must confess, I don't often see candidates come in looking modest." He paused, eyes narrowing slightly. "But let's see if your skills match the simplicity of your appearance." Anna froze for a moment, her pulse quickening. There it was, the subtle, slicing remark meant to undermine her. But she straightened her back, met his gaze, and nodded politely. "Thank you, Mr. Donovan. I'm happy to answer any questions you have." Donovan circled the table slowly, almost predatory in his approach. "Of course. Let's start with something simple. Tell me about your experience managing large teams. I see from your resume, modest positions, modest responsibilities. How exactly does that prepare you for a role at the helm of a major company?" Anna swallowed, keeping her composure. "Well, I believe leadership isn't just about titles or previous roles, Mr. Donovan. It's about vision, integrity, and the ability to guide people through challenges. In my previous role, I led a small team through a project that increased company efficiency by 20% in 6 months. It wasn't a huge title, but it required problem solving, accountability, and strategic thinking skills I believe are essential at any level of leadership." Donovan leaned back slightly, eyes scanning her as if trying to find a flaw. That's an interesting perspective. But you see, Miss Miller, in this company, we deal with high-stakes decisions, massive budgets, and influential partners. Do you really think you have the gravitas to handle that? You seem quite young, and forgive me, but your appearance, does it inspire confidence? When investors see the head of Donovan Enterprises, they expect a certain image. Anna felt the sting of the words, but she refused to let it show. She took a slow breath. "I understand the importance of presentation, Mr. Donovan, but I also believe confidence and competence speak louder than appearances. I may not look the part you expect, but my results, dedication, and approach to leadership are proven to create impact. Donovan's lips curved slightly, almost a smirk. Proven, you say? We'll see about that. Confidence is one thing. Delivering results in a pressure cooker environment is another. Lauren interjected smoothly, her tone tinged with superiority. Miss Miller, perhaps you can tell us about a time you faced criticism or doubt and how you handled it. Surely, someone as humble as you has encountered skepticism before. Anna nodded, calm but firm. Absolutely. In my previous company, many doubted my ideas because of my age and background. But I focused on listening, analyzing data, and presenting solutions that were actionable. By the end of the project, the same people who doubted me were advocating for the strategies I proposed. I believe challenges and criticism are opportunities to prove your value. There was a brief silence. The board members exchanged subtle glances. Donovan tilted his head, studying her. Impressive that you can stay polite under pressure. Most would crumble. He paused. Yet, I can't help but wonder if politeness is enough to lead. Sometimes, the world of business requires a harder edge, ruthlessness. Can you be ruthless when necessary? Anna met his gaze without flinching. I believe in making tough decisions with clarity and fairness. Ruthlessness may yield short-term results, but sustainable success comes from integrity, smart risk-taking, and the ability to inspire people to perform at their best even when challenges arise. Donovan raised an eyebrow, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. He leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on her. You certainly have convictions. Let's see if they hold up under further scrutiny. Anna's hands were slightly trembling under the table, but she remained composed, her voice steady. In that room, filled with subtle judgment, whispers of mockery, and the palpable weight of authority, she realized this interview was more than just questions and answers. It was a test of character, courage, and resilience. The air in the boardroom thickened as Donovan's gaze intensified, signaling that the true challenge was about to begin. And Anna knew, deep down, that every word she spoke from this point forward could either make or break her future. The boardroom had grown colder somehow, the polished surfaces reflecting not just the sunlight, but the unspoken judgment in the air. Anna sat upright, her palms pressed lightly against her knees, feeling the intensity of Richard Donovan's gaze like a physical weight. Donovan leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on the mahogany table, his piercing eyes locked on her. Miss Miller, he began, his tone deceptively calm. Let me ask you something that many would find blunt. When I look at you, I see someone who's simple. Very simple. Tell me, how does someone like you expect to lead a global enterprise? Have you ever managed anything remotely comparable to this? Anna swallowed, but didn't look away. I understand that my previous positions were smaller in scale, Mr. Donovan. But leadership principles, decision-making, motivating teams, analyzing challenges remain the same regardless of size. In fact, smaller teams often require more creativity and problem-solving because resources are limited. Donovan's lips curled into a faint, almost condescending smile. Creativity? Problem-solving? Interesting words. But let me be frank. Here, results matter. Power matters. Presence matters. Investors will not be impressed by modesty or what is it you call integrity? He paused, the word dripping with subtle mockery. You're young, untested, and, forgive me, hardly commanding. People don't follow you because of your kindness. They follow because of strength, confidence, and dominance. Tell me, Miss Miller, can you command that kind of respect? A chill ran through Anna, but she held herself steady. She had rehearsed answers in her mind, but now, in this room, every word needed careful precision. I believe respect is earned, Mr. Donovan. Strength can be shown in many ways, not just through intimidation, but through consistency, fairness, and decisiveness. True leadership inspires rather than forces. Donovan chuckled low, almost mockingly. Inspiring? Let's be honest. Your tone, your appearance, your demeanor while polite is not what I would call commanding. Most CEOs in the city don't need to explain themselves in such a manner. They assert authority, and people obey. You explain. Lauren Stevens, who had been silently observing until now, leaned forward, her voice sharp. Exactly. Miss Miller, we admire humility, but humility alone doesn't run a company. Your resume is modest at best. Surely you understand that entering a boardroom like this with so little experience invites skepticism? Anna felt a heat rise in her cheeks, but she pressed her lips together and spoke evenly. I understand skepticism, Miss Stevens. I also understand that assuming someone's abilities based on appearances or previous titles can lead to missed opportunities. My work speaks for itself. I prefer to let actions demonstrate capability rather than rely solely on words or appearances. Donovan leaned back, his gaze never leaving her. Admirable, I suppose. But let's test that, shall we? He snapped his fingers, signaling one of the board members to pass over a folder of documents. This is a recent project plan from one of our departments. I want you to analyze the flaws in it. Explain to me what's wrong and how you would fix it, assuming, of course, that you even understand its complexity. Anna took a deep breath, glancing at the charts, numbers, and strategy notes. Her mind raced, but she kept her fingers still and her posture poised. She began speaking, pointing out minor inefficiencies, offering practical adjustments, and highlighting potential risks. Her tone was calm, clear, and precise. Donovan listened silently, his expression unreadable. But every so often, a flicker of surprise crossed his face quick, subtle, as if he hadn't expected her to articulate her points so clearly. Yet, his voice when he spoke next was cutting. Interesting, he said slowly. You notice small errors. That's good. But what about strategic vision? Big picture thinking? I fear you are limited to details, Miss Miller. A leader must dominate the room, project confidence, make decisions instantly, and command respect. You seem hesitant, too hesitant. The words landed like cold steel. Anna's stomach tightened, but she refused to let the criticism define her. Instead, she continued to outline her suggestions, now adding strategic insight, showing a clear understanding of both details and overall vision. A faint murmur ran through the room, board members exchanging glances. Donovan leaned forward again, resting his chin on his hand. You speak well, for someone so inexperienced. But words alone do not inspire loyalty or trust. I must admit, I find myself unconvinced. Anna kept her composure, swallowing the sting of the public disapproval. She realized the boardroom wasn't just testing her abilities, it was testing her resilience. Every insult, every skeptical glance, every sarcastic comment was designed to see if she would crumble, and she refused. Her response was calm, but firm. Mr. Donovan, I appreciate your honesty. Skepticism is natural, but leadership isn't about being loud or intimidating. It's about making decisions that benefit the company, guiding people through challenges, and delivering results. If my words haven't convinced you yet, I hope my actions, given the opportunity, will. Donovan's eyes narrowed, his silence heavy. He leaned back slowly, steepling his fingers. Lauren shifted in her chair, subtly annoyed that her attempt to undermine Anna wasn't entirely succeeding. The tension in the room had escalated to a thick, almost tangible fog. For the first time in the interview, Anna realized something important. She wasn't just being evaluated for a position. She was being weighed, scrutinized, and challenged at the deepest level, not just for skill, but for character. And in that moment, she resolved silently that no matter how sharp Donovan's words, no matter how cutting the criticism, she would not lose herself. The clock ticked on, every second stretching like an eternity. And in that silence, the real battle began. Anna versus the perception of authority, power, and prejudice embodied by the CEO himself. The boardroom remained thick with tension. Donovan's sharp gaze had Anna pinned in place, yet she refused to shrink under his scrutiny. The pile of documents lay neatly before her, but she was beginning to realize that this interview wasn't simply about the numbers or the project plan. It was about her presence, her poise, her ability to withstand the storm of judgment. Donovan leaned back, steepling his fingers, and spoke slowly. "Miss Miller, you clearly have opinions. That's admirable. But opinions alone do not run a company. They are fragile. When faced with real pressure, most crumble. Are you aware of how fragile your position could be here?" Anna's lips pressed together for a moment. She felt the weight of the insult, the insinuation that she was unfit, weak, fragile. But instead of reacting defensively, she leaned forward slightly, her voice calm, steady, yet firm. "Mr. Donovan, I understand the stakes," she said, "and I appreciate your concern. Pressure is inevitable, and yes, it tests everyone. But I've found that how one responds under pressure defines their ability to lead. Staying composed, analyzing the situation clearly, and making decisions based on facts and principles. These are the tools I rely on. I may not fit the stereotype of authority you expect, but the results of my approach speak for themselves." There was a brief pause. Donovan's eyes narrowed, studying her with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. "Results, you say?" He raised an eyebrow. "Do explain." Anna opened the folder in front of her, pointing to specific charts, highlighting overlooked details, and carefully explaining how she would restructure the project plan to maximize efficiency. She walked them through potential risks, mitigation strategies, and a vision for long-term growth. Her words were precise, her tone measured, exuding confidence without arrogance. Lauren shifted in her seat, clearly irritated. She had expected Anna to falter, to stumble under Donovan's pointed remarks, but Anna's calm, analytical approach was unexpected. Donovan leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, still observing her every move. "Interesting, very thorough," he murmured almost to himself. Most candidates would have skimmed over these details or panicked under the pressure. Anna met his gaze evenly. "I believe every challenge, Mr. Donovan, deserves attention and clarity. Panic accomplishes nothing. Preparation, insight, and the courage to make decisions, these are what matter." Donovan's lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. For the first time, the arrogance in his demeanor softened, replaced by curiosity. He had expected meekness, defensiveness, or fear. Instead, he saw intelligence, composure, and an unexpected depth of understanding. Depth, he muttered under his breath. Most people cannot handle criticism, let alone turn it into constructive action. Lauren, sensing the subtle shift, tried to regain control. "Miss Miller, that's all well and good in theory, but this is a high-pressure environment. Can you handle the constant scrutiny, the demands, the politics?" Anna nodded calmly. "I understand that politics and scrutiny are part of any leadership role, but I believe in focusing on what can be controlled decisions, strategy, and the people I lead. I cannot control opinions, but I can demonstrate results, integrity, and consistent leadership." The boardroom was silent for a moment. Even some of the senior board members exchanged glances, impressed by the quiet confidence she projected. Donovan's eyes lingered on her face, studying every reaction, searching for a crack, but finding none. Finally, Donovan leaned back and let out a low, contemplative hum. "You're resilient," he said. Most candidates would have lost composure by now. Most would have allowed their insecurities to show. You, however, remain unfazed, calm, analytical, even under relentless scrutiny. Anna felt a flicker of hope. She knew she had to continue this delicate balance, showing intelligence and confidence, while never crossing into arrogance and letting her actions, not words, speak louder. Donovan's gaze sharpened suddenly. "Yet, Miss Miller, I still wonder, can someone with such modest beginnings truly lead at the top level? Or are we merely witnessing luck, timing, and charm? Anna held his gaze evenly. Mr. Donovan, leadership is not dictated by beginnings or appearances. It is measured by the ability to think clearly, act decisively, and inspire others. Luck may open doors, but consistent capability keeps them open. I intend to show that. There was a long pause. Donovan's eyes softened almost imperceptibly. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the city far below, the clicking of Lauren's pen, and Anna's steady breathing. Something had shifted in the air. A subtle acknowledgement that Anna was not just surviving the scrutiny, she was holding her ground, even thriving under it. Finally, Donovan straightened in his chair, steepling his fingers once again. Well, Miss Miller, I must admit, your answers are more compelling than I anticipated. I'm intrigued. Let's see if this resilience of yours can withstand further testing. Anna exhaled slightly, not outwardly, but internally, feeling the smallest thread of validation. She had navigated the first wave of insults and skepticism without faltering. But she knew the real challenge was far from over. The next rounds of questioning would be sharper, more personal, more strategic, and Donovan's scrutiny would only intensify. She had proven she could stand her ground under attack, and for the first time in the interview, she sensed a slight crack in the armor of the CEO's arrogance. The real battle had only just begun. The sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows seemed almost blinding now, highlighting the cold precision of the boardroom. The tension had become tangible. Every member of the board leaned slightly forward, as if anticipating the next move in a carefully orchestrated game of power and intellect. Richard Donovan leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing into a sharp, piercing gaze that could make even the most confident executive falter. Miss Miller, he began, his tone deceptively casual but loaded with weight. So far, your answers have been acceptable. But let's test the real metal. Leadership is not about calm words or neat strategies. It's about pressure, confrontation, and decision-making when stakes are sky high. Can you handle that? Anna nodded, her posture still upright. I do understand, Mr. Donovan, and I welcome the challenge. Donovan's smile was almost imperceptible, but it carried the edge of steel. Good. Let's imagine this scenario. One of your departments has just lost a major client due to a critical error. The board is panicking. Your investors are on edge. Your team is demoralized. What do? Anna's mind raced. She didn't hesitate. First, I would assess the situation calmly, identify the cause of the error, address the client's concerns with transparency, and implement immediate corrective measures. Then, I would communicate with my team, acknowledging the setback while presenting a clear plan for recovery. Morale and trust are crucial, even in crisis. Finally, I would conduct a thorough review to ensure such a mistake doesn't happen again. Quick action and strategic foresight must go hand in hand. Donovan's lips tightened. That's reasonable. But what about accountability? Would you blame your team or take responsibility yourself? Anna met his gaze without flinching. I believe in taking responsibility as a leader while also addressing mistakes transparently. Blame demoralizes teams. Solutions empower them. The focus should be on correcting the problem and preventing recurrence, not punishing individuals unnecessarily. A faint murmur went through the board members. Even Lauren shifted uncomfortably, realizing Anna's approach was both practical and unusually mature. Donovan leaned forward suddenly, voice sharp and cutting. Miss Miller, do you really think you are fit to lead in a cutthroat environment? Our competitors would eat someone like you alive. You lack the toughness, the ruthlessness, the dominance. Your polite tone is charming, but it won't keep this company afloat when real pressure hits. Anna's stomach tightened, but she refused to let the sting show. This was the moment she had anticipated, the ultimate attempt to intimidate her, to expose doubt, to break her composure, and she didn't flinch. "I understand that toughness is required," she replied evenly. But toughness does not equal aggression. Real strength lies in making strategic decisions under pressure, inspiring people to perform at their best, and maintaining integrity while achieving results. I believe these qualities define sustainable leadership, not sheer intimidation. Donovan's eyes flickered with surprise. Few candidates had responded so poisedly under direct attack. He leaned back, steepling his fingers, studying her with an intensity that made Anna's heart race. The silence was long and heavy. Lauren, sensing the subtle shift, attempted to regain control. "Miss Miller, you may talk about strategy and morale, but can you handle personal criticism, direct insult, public embarrassment?" Anna's calm gaze swept across the table. "Criticism is part of every role, and I see it as a chance to improve and clarify. Embarrassment may be uncomfortable, but it cannot shake someone who is confident in their skills, values, and purpose. What matters is action and integrity, not the fleeting opinion of others." For the first time, the room seemed to hold its breath. Donovan's normally sharp, cutting tone softened just slightly, but perceptibly. His eyes held something new. Respect mingled with curiosity. "Most would have crumbled under my words," Donovan said quietly, almost to himself. "Yet you remain steadfast, calm, strategic, even charming under fire. It's rare." Anna allowed herself a small internal exhale. She had passed the critical test. She had remained unbroken under direct insult, skepticism, and challenge. Donovan's gaze swept the room, taking in the silent board members who had been watching her like hawks. "You have poise, Miss Miller, and your answers show intelligence beyond mere titles or experience. Yet I wonder, can someone with such a quiet demeanor truly dominate the room, the company, and the market?" Anna held his gaze evenly. "Leadership is not domination, Mr. Donovan. It's about making informed decisions, guiding teams, and creating long-term success. Quiet confidence does not negate authority, it reinforces it." For a moment, the boardroom was silent. Donovan leaned back, the corners of his mouth lifting in the faintest smile, betraying the beginning of respect. He had tried every tactic, mockery, skepticism, intimidation, but Anna had remained composed, articulate, and unshakable. Finally, he straightened in his chair, voice calm but powerful. "Miss Miller, I must admit, your approach is impressive. Most candidates would have faltered by now. You clearly possess intelligence, courage, and resilience. We'll see if this continues to hold under further scrutiny." Anna's fingers rested lightly on the table. She hadn't celebrated or reacted outwardly. She knew the real test wasn't over. But inside, a quiet confidence was building. She had turned the tide subtly, planting the seeds of respect in the eyes of the most powerful person in the room. The challenge was not complete, but the balance had shifted. And Anna knew, with clarity, that she was no longer just surviving this interview. She was beginning to control it. The boardroom had grown impossibly quiet. Even the soft hum of the city outside felt muted, as though New York itself were holding its breath. Anna sat poised, her hands folded neatly on the table, her expression calm yet alert. For hours, she had weathered scrutiny, insults, and relentless tests of her intellect and composure. Now, every pair of eyes in the room was locked on her, waiting. Richard Donovan leaned forward, fingers steepled, studying her in a way that made the second stretch infinitely. "Miss Miller," he said, voice measured but firm, "you've shown resilience, intelligence, and clarity that surpasses most candidates I've interviewed in my entire career." And yet, his eyes glimmered with a mixture of challenge and admiration. "I must know, do you truly believe you can lead this company not as a manager, not as a mere executive, but as someone capable of guiding the vision culture, and strategy at the very top. Anna's throat tightened slightly. She had rehearsed this moment in her mind, but reality was far more intense. She took a deep breath, allowing her calm to shine through. Mr. Donovan, I do not claim infallibility, nor do I underestimate the responsibility. But I know my capabilities, my principles, and my ability to inspire and lead a team towards success. I am ready to take on the challenge of leading this company with integrity, vision, and results-driven strategy. A faint murmur ran through the board members. Even Lauren Stevens, who had spent most of the interview attempting to undermine her, seemed momentarily speechless. Donovan leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing, lips curved into the slightest smirk. Then, slowly, deliberately, he stood. Every eye in the room followed him. He walked to the head of the table and leaned slightly forward, resting a hand on the polished wood. His presence alone filled the room with authority. "Miss Miller," he said, voice echoing slightly, calm but commanding. "You have faced every insult, every challenge, every attempt to break you with grace, intelligence, and unwavering composure. You have turned skepticism into belief, mockery into respect, and weakness in perception into undeniable strength." Anna's heart pounded. She could feel the room's anticipation, the collective inhalation of a board waiting for what was about to unfold. Donovan paused, and then, in a gesture that shocked everyone, he bowed slightly, not in deference, but as a symbolic act of acknowledgement and respect. "Miss Miller," he continued, "I am convinced that the qualities required to lead this company, resilience, intelligence, strategic vision, and unwavering integrity, reside in you. Therefore, effective immediately, I am appointing you as Chairwoman of Donovan Enterprises." The words hung in the room like a thunderclap. Silence gripped everyone for a heartbeat. Then the board members' reactions began, eyes wide, jaws dropping, and subtle, shocked applause breaking out. Lauren Stevens blinked rapidly, clearly processing the audacity of the decision. Even Mr. Clark Benson's usually reserved expression showed genuine awe. Anna sat frozen for a moment, her pulse racing. Then the reality hit her. This was not just victory over a difficult interview, but over every preconceived notion, every insult, every challenge that had been thrown her way. Tears threatened, but she blinked them back, rising slowly, with dignity and poise. "Thank you, Mr. Donovan," she said, voice steady, but carrying the weight of emotion. "I will honor this responsibility and lead with integrity, vision, and dedication to every member of this company." Donovan nodded, a rare, genuine smile breaking across his face. "I have no doubt you will, Miss Miller. The room has seen what you are capable of under pressure. I expect great things, and I know you will deliver." The boardroom erupted in polite, restrained applause. Some members gave subtle nods of respect, others whispered to each other, clearly impressed. Lauren, for all her previous skepticism, folded her hands, expression unreadable. But Anna sensed a grudging acknowledgement of her victory. Anna's eyes swept the room, briefly meeting Donovan's. There was no arrogance in her gaze, only quiet confidence and gratitude. In that moment, she realized she had not only earned the position, but also the respect of one of the most powerful men in the city. As she rose fully, stepping confidently toward the head of the table, the symbolic weight of her triumph settled over her. This was more than a title. It was a testament to resilience, intelligence, and the unshakable strength of character. The interview, which had begun as a battlefield of insults and doubt, had ended in a triumph that would be remembered not just as a victory of skill, but as a story of dignity prevailing against arrogance and prejudice. And in that boardroom, as the city of New York glittered beyond the glass walls, Anna Miller's journey from humble candidate to chairwoman began not with entitlement, but with the quiet, undeniable force of integrity and resolve. The boardroom was finally settling after the storm of the interview. The echoes of Richard Donovan's declaration still lingered in the polished walls, a reminder that the impossible had just become reality. Anna Miller sat at the head of the table now, her chair slightly taller than the others, the position of chairwoman physically and symbolically marking her new authority. The board members, who had watched her every move with scrutiny and skepticism, now regarded her with a mixture of awe, respect, and cautious admiration. Lawrence Stevens, who had spent most of the interview attempting to belittle her, sat quietly, lips pressed together, clearly processing the unexpected outcome. Even Mr. Clark Benson, who had been quietly observing all along, offered a small nod of acknowledgement. Anna exhaled softly, feeling the weight of the room's attention. Her heart was still racing, but now it was a mix of triumph and quiet reflection. She had walked into this room a simple, modest candidate, underestimated by every person in it. And yet, she'd emerged not just victorious, but respected. Donovan leaned back in his chair, his usual commanding presence softened, and gestured toward her. "Miss Miller, you've handled this entire interview with intelligence, patience, and integrity. You've demonstrated that true leadership isn't about appearances or aggression. It's about resilience, insight, and the ability to guide others through challenges. I have no doubt you will make an exceptional chairwoman." Anna nodded, her expression composed but warm. "Thank you, Mr. Donovan. I understand the responsibility this role carries, and I will lead with dedication, transparency, and fairness." Except, Lauren cleared her throat softly. "Miss Miller, congratulations. I suppose you've proven all of us wrong." Her tone was professional but restrained. Even she could not deny the impact Anna had made. Anna offered a polite smile. "I appreciate that, Miss Stevens. I hope that moving forward, my work will speak louder than any initial impressions." Clark Benson leaned forward, curiosity mingled with admiration. "It's rare," he said quietly, almost to himself, "to see someone withstand such pressure with composure, insight, and unwavering confidence. I look forward to seeing how you lead." The rest of the board members murmured in agreement. The subtle, almost imperceptible tension that had dominated the room for hours had melted into an atmosphere of cautious respect. Anna reflected inwardly. Every insult, every skeptical glance, every sharp word had been a test, but she had maintained her poise, her principles, and her belief in her own abilities. She realized that success is not measured solely by titles or positions, but by the courage to face challenges with dignity, the wisdom to act decisively, and the integrity to remain true to oneself under pressure. Donovan broke the silence again, a rare, approving smile on his face. The city outside may see Donovan Enterprises as a powerhouse, but inside these walls, it's the people who define it. Today, Miss Miller, you've shown what leadership truly looks like. Welcome aboard. Anna straightened in her chair, letting the words sink in. She had navigated the gauntlet of scrutiny and emerged stronger, not just in position, but in confidence. She'd earned respect, she'd earned her place, and she'd proven that character, intelligence, and resilience can triumph even against the most powerful adversaries. As the meeting adjourned, Anna rose and gathered her things, her movements calm and deliberate. She stepped toward the floor-to-ceiling windows, gazing out over the New York skyline. The city stretched endlessly before her, alive with opportunity and challenge. In that moment, she realized that this was only the beginning. She had entered the room underestimated and doubted. She had faced insult, skepticism, and relentless testing. And now, as chairwoman, she understood that true leadership was not about meeting expectations, but about exceeding them quietly, consistently, and with unwavering integrity. Anna turned back toward the room one last time. The board members were packing up, some exchanging whispered compliments, others still stunned. Donovan watched her, a subtle nod of respect, acknowledging that today, a simple woman had transformed into a formidable leader. The story of this interview, once filled with doubt and insult, had become a testament to resilience, intelligence, and the undeniable power of character. And for Anna Miller, the journey from a modest candidate to chairwoman of one of New York's most influential companies had just begun.